Coming up on this episode of Once a Duck.
That week leading up to that Pac-12 championship game against Arizona, it was just the level of detail. Everybody was so locked in, and I don't think nobody was surprised that we kind of did them the way we did them. We knew we was going to blow them out.
This week, we've got a whole lot more for you than just a normal week because it's Big Ten championship week between Oregon and Penn State.
Where's your favorite place to take college game day? And I say every time, Eugene, Oregon.
That's right, everybody. We are back with another episode of the Once a Duck podcast. I am Sam Schmidt. With me, as always, a man who for the first time all season was in Eugene, Oregon, was a member of the Autzen Faithful, and was there to witness Oregon finally get a win over Washington. It is Nick Cody. Nick, how are you? How was your Saturday in Eugene?
Well, I think first thing I got to tell you is thank you to everybody. And as you're very quickly realizing, I left my voice in Oregon, and it still has not quite gotten back with me. So please bear with me. This is not going to be my usual silky smooth Once a Duck podcasting voice. I might hop into Steve-O territory. My voice wasn't the only victim, unfortunately. As you can see back here behind me, I also left a large part of my O chain at some point picking up the Duck mascot after the game on the field. But a tremendous game. What a great rivalry week. And thank you, all of you Once a Duck fans that reached out, that recognized me, gave me a fist bump, said what's up. And I always appreciate it. And for those of you that aren't already following us on all the social media, our handles are at Samuel101TS for my man Sam Schmidt over here, my fantastic co-host. It was great to finally see you. And always, my handle is at Nick R. Cody, and ours is at Once a Duck on all the platforms you can expect. And again, always love the respect I get from every time I get down there. I'm always surprised and appreciative from each and every fan that reaches out and says, hey, listen to your podcast. Love what you guys are doing because, man, we appreciate it, and we sure don't see it enough in the views or clicks or the YouTube revenue. Do we, Sam?
Well, I'll tell you what, Nick, if we can get some more YouTube revenue going, I promise you will see Once a Duck in the playoffs. If we can get that YouTube revenue up real quickly, we will be there all along the way. Where we were this past weekend, though, that was Eugene, Oregon, where the Oregon Ducks, Dan Lanning, he finally figured out his Washington problem. He figured it out, and boy, oh boy, you could say, too, smashing success. The Ducks figured out exactly what it was they needed to do. First quarter, it was 7-3 at the end of it. It was a little bit of a close game, but it felt as if Oregon was in control. That control really felt asserted the rest of the game. Oregon, a 49-21 victory. We all know that we had a lot of fun before that game, Nick, a lot of really fun people that we do need to get some shout-outs to before the end of this episode. But just talking about this game a little bit, what really stood out to you? Your first time seeing this Oregon football team in person.
Oh, man, what a special year. And I got to shout out Bryce Betcher. Got to actually talk to him a little bit on the field. Started getting a little bit sentimental just because just letting him understand that, growing up a little bit further away, but still having that dream of being a Duck and seeing somebody come and realize it in not just one, but two sports, and absolutely going out there and, really having a really prideful senior night is one way to put it. And that's what I thought that night. And then the Ducks versus them video comes out, and we see who gets the bat. We see who gets the Inglorious Bastards reference there. And wow. What an awesome motivator Dan Lanning is, and it stood out right there in the game. Oregon comes out, ties a school record in sacks, and doesn't allow a single sack or tackle for a loss on their end. You know me as an offensive lineman. I love to see it, and I love to see Husky quarterbacks getting sacked.
And boy, oh boy, were they sacked in this ball game. Oregon tying a program record with 10 sacks in this game. There are so many guys at the game to go over, and I'm guaranteeing you on defense, we're both going to pick guys who were able to get sacks in this ball game. But in general, such a good job from this defensive front, really taking advantage of a Husky unit that had a lot of turnover this past offseason. Nick, for the first time, seeing it in person, seeing their get off, seeing their movement, seeing how they work as a team. What do you think of this Oregon front four, front seven, front three, whatever alignment they're in? What do you think of that group?
I don't know. It was tough looking at seeing a Washington JV team there playing. All right, got to get my shots in. It's been too long since we've gotten a win over the Huskies. I got to let her fly. Overall, just especially coming in the day before and walking around the facilities, and every time you walk across guys and you see and you know who the offensive line guys are now, and all right, damn. Walking by, just love the size and physicality that we've been able to bring onto this team. It stands out right away, and the Huskies had literally nothing to match up to it all night long. It really did feel like two different classes. It really felt similar to like watching that Oregon State game earlier this season. And it's again, we'll talk about it a little bit later because we have the luxury of also talking about signing day this week. But just you can tell the level that Oregon is recruiting at like right now. It's just unparalleled, especially just recruiting at certain positions that it just feels like Oregon's never been at top tier levels of recruiting for it ever in our past. And to just see it completely align with the message that Dan Lanning is sending to his team, and that we're getting to the echoes of a couple days later with the Ducks versus them. We can see it. There's just this cohesion right now in the program. That's how you're the number one team in the nation, and arguably one of the number one top recruiting classes in the nation. Everything's coherent. Everybody's seeing what the vision of this program is, to win national championships, and everybody wants to be a part of it right now. And if you don't, guess what? You're probably going to be in our way.
Well, and I'll tell you what, we've got a great conversation coming up. Recruiting, it's usually not something we do. We usually do a little bit more with people who officially have been Ducks for a while. But that being said, with how much interest it has garnered, with how much justified intrigue there is within this program toward what has been a phenomenal recruiting cycle, that's a conversation I can't wait to be able to get into. Before we do, though, we have a couple of segments to go over. As far as this Oregon-Washington game is concerned, let's start off, though. Guys of the game. I just want to hear, in your mind, some of the people who stuck out. And, 10 sacks, we mentioned it. We do have to start with this defense, Nick. Who's the player that really stuck out to you with this defensive unit?
I mean, ultimately, I let my bias just show. I'm so happy to be able to get to really just introduce myself to him after the game for the first time and just thank him for giving me so much to cheer for this season. And especially, not having to hear as much as Seattle and the way he played, it's just echoed through Bryce Betcher, man. Just, they could talk all as much about a two-sport athlete, but that's a 5-star human being. So that's three different areas that guy is a 5-star right now. So just awesome kid. And dude, can't wait to see what he does, and whatever he does in the future, he's going to be knocking it out of the park.
I have a feeling that he certainly will be. 11 tackles total, 4 of those solos, 2 for loss, as well as the sack. A really, really great game out of him. Somebody who I think his energy throughout encapsulated what all of Autzen was that night. Might have been a little chilly. Boy, oh boy, was he a roaring fire for that Oregon football team. A guy on the defense who, frankly, I thought had a great ball game. Somebody who I thought was everywhere. I mean, everybody's giving him the attention around the nation. He deserves it. Jordan Burch, man. Jordan Burch getting in there. He had 3 total tackles, 2.5 for loss, 2.5 sacks. This dude's just getting in there and causing problems. We see how he's able just to come around the edge, the speed to get around, the strength to get around. I believe there's a clip you can go watch. We're not doing tape time this week because we got 2 interviews. But if you want to go find some tape time after this podcast, go check out Urban Meyer breaking down some of the tape from the Oregon-Washington game. He breaks down a Jordan Burch edge rush that is just debilitating to watch if you are in any way the Washington offensive line in that one. Phenomenal game from Jordan Burch. Another one along so many this season. So many times he's been able to show up. Basically, anytime he's put on the pads, he's shown up. That's something Oregon needs to see to continue throughout the rest of this season. Who do you got on offense, Nick? We haven't talked much about the offense yet.
God, man, there's so much cohesion. I would like to give it to, the offensive line, or maybe even if I could give it to a moment in the game, like the 1 minute span there where we got Jordan James 2 touchdowns. That was pretty great. But overall, you got to give it to the leader, guy going out with, a senior night in his first and only season as a Duck, where he's been able to do so much for us and really just, I mean, you've seen this guy grow as the leader too. Usually a guy that gets that, you're bringing in a guy to bring that kind of experience, but this is a guy that, man, he's just become such an important part of Eugene. And I think an important part of a little bit of what we're going to be talking about with one particular player that flipped in recruiting for us this week. And, he just represents the Ducks so well. That's Dylan Gabriel. Gets out there, 2 touchdowns passing, 1 to help Ferguson set the record there, and then the rushing touchdown right there just to assert dominance over the Huskies as any Duck senior should, especially on senior night. God, what a tale, and what a season to be the second team in Oregon history to be 12-0.
And Nick, just really quickly before I get into my player of the game, how does it feel to see another Oregon team get to 12-0?
Jealousy, man, jealousy. I really wish we had a playoff format too, because it was like, especially that time, that would have been a lot more game reps for me. A guy that was kind of really mixing it up is that 6th, 7th guy in the offensive line rotation. So, especially that in that extended postseason, looking forward to that and seeing how that shakes up. Man, just so excited, and especially NIL wise. Very jealous of being a 12-0 team with NIL versus without it. All seriousness out there. I'm only laughing about it because it's just hiding the tears.
Well, you're right. I mean, just frankly, being able to get that much more showtime with somebody when you're able to make that money, that is something huge right there. And I think that is something that is maybe just a little bit of a motivating factor. Not that any of these guys need one, but just the idea of, hey, the more time that you're on TV, that's not a bad thing. I don't think there's going to be anybody who's going to be very against that, at least of that group. Guy I'm going to go with who I think deserves some credit right here, Terrence Ferguson.
Yep.
Senior. Obviously, that's great. It's amazing. He had a wonderful career here at Oregon. Really was with Oregon throughout an entire rebuild. He was here throughout the entire and rebuilds a lot because, it was a team that was up ranked at one point number 3 in the nation the year before Dan Lanning got here. It's a very good team, but to be able to be here, have that change come about, be able to be one of the leaders in that locker room throughout, be the kind of guy who's able to come out and frankly in this game kind of get right a little bit. In the Maryland game, he had some drop issues. There were a couple things that looked a little iffy. In the Wisconsin game, he had that amazing catch on 3rd and 9. Before that, he did have a couple of mistakes, though. So being able to see him come out, play a really clean game against Washington, make the type of plays that he needed to make. 4 receptions, 48 yards, 21 of them was long, and he had the touchdown as well, a nice grab. Almost another one as well. He was dragged down just short of the line of the goal line there. A really nice game for him, a really nice salute. If it's his last game at Autzen, it was one to remember. He's somebody Oregon's going to need to be huge this weekend in the coming weeks.
If you're going to mention salute, you get one in the history books right there, getting the finger point back at him. All right. I see you. I like it. Ace move.
How could you not? That was, and again, I know a few people have asked. I still don't know personally who took that photo, and whoever did, bravo to you. All the credit in the world. That's a phenomenal shot right there.
Exactly. Yeah. Beautiful.
But Nick, finally, it's special teams time. Is there anybody out there that you were seeing that was really impressive?
Let's go with the long snapper.
There we go.
I know.
There we go. You're right. He had some honors this week. That was the last thing I was going to talk about.
All right. Well, there we go. A peek behind the curtain, guys. I just throwing it out there, but Sam, of course, already has it prepared. But yeah, let's go with the long snapper. It's about time.
Absolutely, it is about time. I think literally just 2 days ago, the Big Ten awards were announced, and I'm scrolling to it right now just to make sure that I have it. But yeah, Luke Basso is officially a second teamer. I believe, according to the media, he was a first teamer. I don't know if that's better or worse than the coaches, but he's a first team, second team kind of guy right there. So to credit where it's due. And this was the last thing I was going to do. We were just going to give a shout out to all of our Oregon Ducks who finished in the Big Ten honors. I'm going to go through them right here and just give you the list, Nick.
Do it.
The action afterwards. First team quarterback, offensive player of the year in the Big Ten. It is quarterback Dylan Gabriel. Also a starter for the first team, the tackle Josh Connerly. Once we get to the second team, you see that Oregon's got a handful of guys, including running back Jordan James, wide receiver Tez Johnson, as well as on the defensive front, Mateo Uiagalelei, Bryce Betcher, and in the special teams, Tez Johnson as a returner. Also, previously mentioned Luke Basso, long snapper. Second team amongst the coaches, first team amongst the media. So congratulations to all of those guys that you love to see getting those honors from this Oregon football team. A lot of people, though, Nick, they thought that Oregon probably deserved a few more names on those lists. Curious what you think about that.
Hey, man, you hear that every once in a while, but hopefully it just motivates those guys to go out there and kick some ass this week in the Big Ten title game. Go and take it, leave no questions asked, and or unanswered, whatever you want. But I just say, at the end of the day, especially, depending on if it's the media or the coaches, regardless, FIBU, F everybody but us. It's that for a reason. And, your opinion of yourself is always more important than the opinion of others. And I believe this Oregon team believes they're the number one team in the country, and that's all that matters. As long as they go out there and prove it on the football field, that's all that counts.
And Nick, before we go, anything else you have to say about the Autzen experience? Anybody that we need to thank, for as much as they do for us throughout the season?
Always, we got to shout out the Big Ten tailgate. It's over there, the combination of Mark and T-Rod. Got to shout out the Ranchito Grill as always. Ruben and Tony there. A fantastic establishment. Was able to get there for Friday night while we watched all 8 overtimes of Georgia Tech. Oh, if we had time to talk about it, we would. But guys, guess what? The big thing is we got to thank all of you for just being the best fans, because everybody that reaches out whenever we're out there and mentions that you've listened to the podcast, it just motivates us that much more to do that much better. And that's why, for once, we're going to break a rule here. We've only talked about signing day or recruiting like 2 other times, it feels like. And it's been a long time if you haven't noticed. So what we're going to do for this one is bring in a special guest that's more qualified than us and has even a little bit of insight on when I was getting recruited. So it'll be a lot of fun to talk with our next guest, the publisher of Duck Sports Authority, Scott Reed. Joining us now is the publisher of the Rivals.com segment that is specifically Oregon Ducks. And he is now the publisher of Duck Sports Authority, Scott Reed. How's it going, Scott? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing really good, man. Just excited for this Big Ten championship game, and excited even more to talk more recently about this signing day class, early signing day, a new thing for an old guy like me, but something you obviously remember from back in my time when I was signing with the Ducks. I still remember I'm a huge Rivals fan over a lot of these sites, not just because they were the ones that gave me a 4-star rating, but because of the relationships I built with guys like you, AJ Jacobson, a lot of the great people, to give a shout out over there at Rivals, and those that know on the message boards where I once upon a time gave some recruiting information on the guys I was trying to recruit when I was back there. But just any tidbits you remember about me back in those days that you could throw out there for our fan base.
Oh, man. So if you guys don't know, Nick used to come to our tailgates because Duck Sports Authority sponsors tailgates. We've been doing that since, I think, 2005 when we first started sponsoring tailgates. And I took over sponsoring the tailgates in 2009, and back then we got to party in the regular lot instead of across the street because they had general admission parking. Nick came by to all our tailgates during his senior year, and it was such a blast. Just having him, I think, he brought friends with him at times, and
Yeah.
companions with him at times as well. I remember a young blonde lady that he brought with you one time.
Yeah.
So really, it was just a lot of fun. No, he did not drink any beer with us. He was underage. But we had a lot of great times back then. And that was, it was so much fun bringing that. And then obviously I do remember his moniker on the boards because it was, do you remember what you used?
Oh, I still use it. I die skating.
I die skating. That was that was Nick when he was on our boards talking. Most people knew that's who it was because we weren't shy about it, and he paid for it himself, so we weren't providing any extra benefits to anybody. But it's always great to have that kind of depth and background in there, because when I'm talking about when I talk to recruits, things like that, it's different than when the recruits come on and talk about what they've gone through. When players say, this is what it was like when I was recruited, and the differences that exist today from when you were there, it's such a night and day difference for the way that recruiting is done and the way we can do coverage. It's not the same as it was 20 years ago.
Absolutely.
You weren't recruited 20 years ago, but
well, no, well, we are getting very, very dangerously close. But on that topic, like I did have my own subscription, because how else was I going to, know the status of guys I was trying to recruit, like Terrell Pryor. Now, on the level of Terrell Pryor, one of the two big flips we got today. We got a flip from Ohio State and the defensive backfield. But the guy I think everybody's talking about is the 5-star quarterback flip for, I'm going to try this, Jaron Sungapolo Tulele.
Sungapolo Tulele.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Sungapolo Tulele. Somehow I can get the Hawaiian names. I don't know. As long as they're phonetically easy, I can deal with it. Yeah. So he had a great Elite 11 camp, and that's where Dylan Gabriel saw him and told the coaches, "Hey, I think you need to take a second look at this guy. He's from Hawaii. He's a lefty, but he was slinging the ball at the Elite 11 camp and really surprised everybody. He was a fast riser, because you know how it goes when you're a Hawaii kid. A lot of talent, but sometimes you don't play against the best talent, and so when you get out here to a camp and you get a chance to compete against the other best of the best, people start to take notice and say, oh, wait a minute, he's just not a Hawaii kid dominating other Hawaii kids. He's a kid that can play at this level." And, they were late to the game because he was already committed to Cal pretty early. Oregon offered him after the Elite 11, and they finally got him out for a visit because he doesn't come out to the West Coast often from Hawaii. That's an expensive flight to do short notice. They got him out for a visit, and he loved it, but I had been committed to Cal for so long. He was being torn, and it was a real difficult decision for him because he didn't want to break his commitment, but Oregon was his dream school. It was Marcus Mariota, it was Dylan Gabriel. Those are the guys he looked up to, especially Dylan Gabriel. And so when it came down to it at the last, he just had to go with his heart and not let the fact that he had to turn somebody down in the process be that this final part of it. It was really the place for him to be. And he's not a 6 foot or 5'10" quarterback. He's a legit 6'3", excuse me. And he can throw the ball. He can sling it. He's got a great arm. He understands the game. He's going to be, he's has a chance to be really, really good at the next level. Nobody's going to come in and start as a true freshman, but he's coming into a great situation at Oregon, right? He's got Dante Moore is almost surely a presumptive starter, so he's got some time to develop with Akili Smith Jr. Sorry, I dropped the other name that's the quarterback sign. But, he's got a chance to come in and develop and be a really special player, and I think that's going to be something to watch with him and Akili both competing for that spot.
Scott, Nick obviously is going to dive right into the weeds as he always does, being as knowledgeable as he is on this kind of a thing. Just taking a step back, though, a little bit, somebody from my perspective, maybe who hasn't always been as connected with what's going on in recruiting and everything happening within the rankings and with all the sites and everything like that. From just a basic perspective, explaining it to the fifth grader, if you will, what is this Oregon class in terms of like what it looks like compared to classes historically, what they've been doing recently, and then who are some of the real highlights of this class that people who maybe aren't so big on recruiting definitely need to be aware of?
So the thing to know about the recruiting, first of all, Rivals ranks the top 20 players in the class. That way you can't earn more points just by having more commits. So the top 20 is going to be your best top 20. So for Oregon right now, there are 20 commits, and 2 of them are 3 stars. Everybody else is 4 or 5 stars. and we'll get into that because there's a couple of guys out there that may still be in play for Oregon. But what they should know, first of all, it's one of the deepest defensive back classes I've ever seen at Oregon. We're talking 3 top 10 cornerbacks in the nation, with Dorian Brew and Trey McNutt as a safety, but Naeem Offord and Brandon Finney. Those 3 cornerbacks are elite, with Offord being a 5-star and then the other 2 both being 4-stars. But there are 3 of the top 10 cornerbacks in the nation, and that is something that I don't think I've ever seen Oregon have. And then you throw in the top safety with Trey McNutt, a 5-star out of Ohio, who is one of the things we should know about Trey McNutt. The guy actually is a leader on the field and off the field. So he took it upon himself. Ohio has certain rules about doing these 7-on-7 camps that makes players ineligible. And he did it anyway because he wanted to fight the system. And he took a hit where he was going to be suspended for doing this. And he said, I don't care. We need to make this right for the other players that want to go to these camps and get noticed, because that's how some of these 3-star players get noticed, is by being at camps and performing in a way that they're not expected. And so he fought for the rules. It's just a really impressive thing for a guy who, you need your own tape for your senior year in order to make sure everybody still recruits you hard. And he didn't care. He wanted to make sure that the next generation had it set up right for him. So I really applaud him for that. And that's something that, when Dan Lanning talked about character and culture last night in his conference, that's the kind of stuff he's talking about character of these athletes, is somebody who goes to bat for not just himself, but the rest of the state. So the defensive backfield class, really deep, really talented. Wide receiver class, probably a generational talent with DeCorian Moore. He's a 5-star out of Texas, and just one of those guys that if you watched Ryan Williams, what he did for Alabama this year, I can see Corey Moore having that kind of impact at Oregon next year as a true freshman. He is just too good to keep off the field. And then you throw in a guy like Dallas Wilson, top 10 wide receiver, a near 5-star player. He kind of fell out right at the end where he didn't meet that 5-star criteria. And an underrated 4-star, even though he's ranked number 70 in the nation, is Cooper Perry out of Arizona. The guy is super talented and a super hard worker, and played for some NFL coaches in high school, and he knows what he's doing when it comes to, he's really technically proficient at what he does on the field, route running, leverage, understanding defenses and how to play against different things and where to be in a zone defense versus what to do against man coverage. He's really good at those technical things because he's really well coached. And he's going to, I think this is just one of those classes where you go, wow, that's really deep at those areas. But it doesn't stop there, because you've got a 2 4-star running backs. De'Ara Hill out of Illinois just had 518 total yards in the state championship game in Illinois on 32 touches. That's an incredible performance, and I think he had 7 touchdowns. So, and then Jordan Davison, who was a 5-star running back until near the end, when he played at Modern Day, so his production wasn't really what you would expect from a 5-star, and they dropped him in the rankings. But he's still a guy that's, you want to talk about thunder, he's about 5'11", 6 foot tall, and 225, 230 pounds, and he moves like he's 210. So he's just really, really powerful, and one of those guys that is going to make yards after contact and be an effective player. And that's the kind of thing that you need, is multiple running backs in the Big Ten. You can't get by with just one good running back and then hope that that's all you have. So it's just so deep at every position. It's hard not to talk about every player that has signed.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, another player, on the opposite side of the ball, kind of that's going to have to be practicing tackling those backs. Guy we flipped from Miami, I would love to hear about and hear your comparisons for, Gavin Nix.
So Gavin Nix, he's 6 foot, he's 225, 230 pounds. He's been the same size since his freshman year of high school, which is why he didn't rise up the rankings, because he didn't grow physically, and that kind of pigeonholed him in the minds of some people, because he's not a 6'3" linebacker that has that ranginess. But he reminds me, and it's a hard comparison to make, what he reminds me of is Nakobe Dean, right? I think that's what Dan Lanning sees in him. The Oregon fans want to hear he's like Michael Clay, which he is, but I think he's probably at this level more technically advanced than Michael was. Michael was a little bit undersized at first. He wasn't 6 foot and 220 pounds coming out of high school. He grew into the role and he became a great player. But those are 2 apt comparisons, and I love Gavin Nix, I think early on he loved Oregon, but it was just such a difficult flight for them that at first they didn't, that was like, this isn't going to work for us because the family has to come out and see us. But he got a bad flight. When you get stuck on a bad connection where you get stuck somewhere waiting for the next flight, that can temper how you feel about the flight. But he came around, and he came out, by the way, as a secret visitor on the bye week. Nobody knew. Great week to do it because there's nobody taking pictures of recruits coming out the tunnel during a bye week. So he came out for a second visit during that, and his family was with him. And I think that visit sealed the deal. They knew when they went back that it was a different story than what they thought. And it was something that was important to Oregon to get that kind of a linebacker in there, a true inside linebacker type of kid that you could trust to be that middle guy and not be, they've got a couple of linebackers outside, but they're not the same kind of player. And I think that's something they really wanted to add to this class. They brought in a couple of different visitors late, and Gavin Nix flipped. And I think I like the Nakobe Dean comparison. I like the Michael Clay comparison because those, I think, are two guys that he's like in a lot of ways.
Scott, we don't want to take up too much more of your time. One last question I've got for you. Who is one player who maybe isn't at the top of any of these lists by any means, but is somebody who came in with this class who you think Oregon fans should keep an eye on? Maybe not for next season, but for a couple seasons down the road, just someone you think who could develop really nicely for this Oregon team.
So the one name that I like is, and I already mentioned it, was Cooper Perry. I think that guy is so underrated. He's a top 70 player, and yet people overlook him because of Corey Moore and Dallas Wilson being such elite wide receivers. So that's one. And the other one that I think to keep an eye on, and this is going to be offensive lineman, and I really like the growth and improvement of Zach Steskowski. He was a flip from Washington. Yay. I know everybody's happy about that, but I think the growth that he had, he's from Oregon, the growth that he had his senior year, the improvement that he saw, I can really see him developing into a guy that's a long time, he's going to get some early playing time, not as a true freshman, but I can see him in his second and third year really starting to step into a big role because of his ability to continue learning and getting better and that desire and drive. So those are two guys that I really like as underrated prospects that I think could surprise some people.
Oh, love it. Scott, as always, you know me so well. Got to end on that note with an offensive lineman flipping from Washington to Oregon. Thank you very much again for joining us. Just heading out real quick. Do you got a prediction for us in this Big Ten championship weekend against Penn State?
I do. My score I have is 28-24. I think at the end of the day, Penn State has a really good defense. There's no lying about that. Abdul Carter is really good off the edge. But I think Oregon has more offensive weapons than Penn State does. Penn State has a couple. They have Tyler Warren. They have Nick Singleton. But Oregon has just too many weapons to keep them held down for too long. And I think I really like their defense in this game. I could see Oregon holding them to less than 24 because that defensive line right now, man, they are on fire. And they're getting healthier as we speak. I think probably got healthier today than they were yesterday. Mm-hmm. So that kind of depth at defensive line has really helped the Ducks get to this point, and I really like the options that Oregon has on offense to make some plays that I don't think Penn State has quite as many weapons. So I'm going to go 28-24.
Love it. Well, thank you again for joining us. All of you, check his workout everywhere. DSA and you have multiple handles, right? At Duck Sports.
I'm at Duck Sports and at DSA Football. If you do the DSA Football, you're going to see more pictures of my dog. The Duck Sports is the one I use for most of the publishing, but I've had them both now since I took over in August. So it's enjoyable to do both ways and be able to interact different ways with people.
Well, go check it out. We'll hopefully have him on again. Thanks, Scott.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Coming off that, again, what a great opportunity. We don't talk recruiting often, but maybe we'll do it more, especially if you guys like it. Let us know. With that, we got a Big Ten championship weekend, and that means we got to have more than just our normal one big guest. We got to have two, Sam, right?
Well, Nick, that's the plan this week. Coming in here now, a guy played for Oregon for some of the best years there were to be a Duck. A redshirt in 2010, played all the way through his senior year in 2014, where he finished as a second-team All Pac-12 selection, had an interception against Arizona in the Pac-12 championship game, went on to have one against James Winston in the Rose Bowl. Give it up, folks, for Erick Dargan.
Joining us now, somebody who knows quite a bit about conference championship games, a guy who got to see quite a few of them in his tenure as an Oregon Duck, defensive back, Erick Dargan. Erick, thank you for joining us. How you doing, man?
No problem. Thank you guys for having me.
So I understand you're just coming in out of practice. Tell the people out there what you're doing right now as a coach.
Right now, I'm a secondary coach at Pittsburgh High School, my alma mater, where I also went to high school and played before I went to the University of Oregon. So it's only right I come back here and kind of really kick off my coaching career and get back to the place where I came out of.
Well, congratulations to you on that and giving back. And thanks for joining us. And just really wanted to talk to you about a lot of things. But let's start off with this season as an Oregon Duck. What's it been like to you to watch the second, team in Oregon history to go 12-0 since I believe you were first with the program?
Definitely. My freshman year, I believe so. It's good. I feel like we're getting back to it almost feels like they're playing to how, if not a little better than when we was there playing. So it feels very familiar with seeing the style and how they playing and the intensity and the level of confidence of the guys. It feels good to, you feel me, see them guys out there balling.
Erick, you played at Oregon for some phenomenal years, 2010 through 2014. We're able to see a lot of success there during your time. One thing about your career journey that I find really, really interesting is you were a part of that secondary group, a really young group that had to deal with a lot of 2011 season, even into the 2012 season a little bit. Tell us just a little bit about what it was like being a part of that group, the journey you guys had, and then really what it was like to face that adversity and then come together over those years.
Oh, definitely. For us coming in, I want to say when I came to college, there was over 20 DBs in our room. So I think all the freshmen, that kind of set the tone. Like, we all coming from high school where we're the top guys. You get in that DB room when it's 20 guys outside of you being the top guy to everybody's the top guy where they come from. So I was fortunate enough to have Marvin Jones, Eddie Pleasant, John Boyette, just some of the guys, and Cliff Harris, that I seen the way they competed with each other. Also, there was a brotherhood to where they held each other accountable, but also pushed each other in practice. So me being a freshman, I adapted to just competing and falling in love with the process of being an Oregon Duck and, just staying true to the program, but also believing in myself and our secondary group. I think when you get to college, it's like everybody's a whole team, but I think your position group you really bond with more. And I think at the time we just had a lot of good DBs that was all coming from different over, and we all just kind of pushed each other in the right direction.
Yeah, we just talked to Walt Thurman last week, and then this week talking to you, and then coming up on this week we have a signing day where we have 4 5-star defensive backs. Just talk about for a little bit what's it like seeing that now, and then comparing it back to what your recruiting experience was coming out of Pittsburgh High School.
I mean, believe it or not, I don't think I ever told nobody I actually was not going to go to Oregon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And we're breaking news right here on Once a Duck, guys. Erick Dargan was almost not once a Duck.
Yeah, definitely. I think at the time I was thinking about going to UCLA or Washington State. Fun fact, Nick Adioli, he's also from Pittsburgh. He's also from Pittsburgh to where he was the DC at Oregon, and he kind of told me, like, man, you're going to be a Duck. And the only thing I can think in my head at the time was, I'm going anywhere but Oregon. So he kind of convinced me to get up there and take a visit. And once I took a visit, it's the atmosphere, how much the players was playing together, the unity that I seen, and the culture that was up there, it was just unmatched throughout the whole country. You know what I mean? Meaning all of the universities. So it kind of felt like home. I felt like I could be successful in school. And from the moment I got up there to the moment I left, I felt like Eugene's a special, unique place. You just got to get up there and see. You know what I mean? From even the air, the scenery, the walks to the stadium, like, you learn to appreciate the little things and the simple things out there. So I'm thankful for my time in Eugene, like, more than everything. I'm thankful for all the teammates that I was able to play with and also learn from. I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm grateful from. I was able to learn from a lot of different guys.
Well, we mentioned it earlier, Eric. This is conference championship week. Oregon, in their first season here in the Big Ten, they're going to be playing Penn State Saturday night for the Big Ten title. You were able to compete in two different conference championship games. The first ever Pac-12 title game held in Eugene, Oregon at Autzen Stadium, as well as another huge Pac-12 title game, a revenge game against Arizona and Santa Clara. Tell us just a little bit about both of those games, your memories, and then especially of that second one, a particular play that I think a lot of Oregon fans remember of yours from that game in Santa Clara.
Okay. I think the first year of just the Pac-12, them extending the teams, and I want to say we played UCLA, right?
Yep.
Okay, so
they were forgettable too.
it wasn't like a normal game just because like Austin's already a special place, but then you got all the little signs and how the wires hanging from the Pac-12 championship. It just feels like a very intensified game. So to actually play them in the conference championship and get the win, where we had a lot of people on our team from LA, is like we kind of want to set the tone and just go down in the history of being the first Pac-12 champs. You know what I mean? So fast forward 2 years later, you playing Arizona. I think that game was a little more personal because they got us at home early that year, and we felt like we kind of gave that game up. So that week leading up to that Pac-12 championship game against Arizona, it was just the level of detail. Everybody was so locked in, and I don't think nobody was surprised that we kind of did them the way we did them. Like, we knew we was going to blow them out just because the previous games, like, all the good plays came off our mess up. So as long as we take care of handling our business, make sure everybody know what they're doing, then we knew the game was going to go in our favor. Actually, the game was a little boring, too, to be honest with you.
You mentioned that, and I will say and I'm very rarely one to share the stories in this one. One of the very few Oregon games in high school that I didn't watch because I was playing in a basketball game at the time. I remember at halftime I came in and I asked my coach, I was like, "Did you check the score? How is it?" He was just like, "Don't worry about it. They're good. They're good."
Yeah, I think our front seven probably had like one or two tackles that game. When I say it was boring, it's like, man, there's no action back here for us. But our front seven, from our linebackers to our D-line, they pretty much sealed the game. So when the ball was in the air, I think they start throwing towards the end. I don't think he was completing the ball in our secondary like that. Not deep. You know, we didn't give up too many deep balls that year. So just to come back and be able to make a play in the game like that in the magnitude and to be in California in the Bay Area, that meant a lot to me. And then they'll come on top the victory, like, that was big. That was big.
Well, man, I appreciate really hearing your experience of like Eugene growing on you because, when you got there, you definitely seemed like a guy that did not enjoy Eugene your freshman year. I still remember there was one summer conditioning, man, and you were just hot. And I remember it reminded me a lot of when I had a locker next to TJ Ward, and you just remind me a lot of him. I was telling Sam before this podcast, and I was like, can't let this young man know that, but I had to give you like a heat check right there. And and the way you took it, I respected it. And you just brought that much more to the condition. That's just kind of the camaraderie we had back then.
Bingo.
That built those teams back up. And that's why every time I see every one of those guys from those teams, it's always like family because those guys stuck it through and we made the best of it. So what's one guy I want to know, one young guy that was coming up that you kind of saw that same thing in and had to say, hold on, young buck, hold on.
I had to think about this.
You probably had a lot in the DB room. You probably had a lot.
Yeah, I definitely. After me, our little TVs was different. But I'll say Tyree Robinson. He was definitely one of the DBs. I wouldn't say like far as like kind of checking him or pulling them, reeling them in and getting them to buy in. It was more so like, I think when he came in, I knew he was different. So I just wanted to be a mentor / big brother to him, kind of how like Eddie Pleasant was for me and Avery as well. So just let him know, like, bro, handle your business. You on track. You know what you're doing, and this is what you need to do to make sure you stay on the field. And I think he took it and did the best he can do and put it in his own way, and everything worked out for him with his career at Oregon as well, just as far as being smart, being versatile, being able to play multiple different positions on the field. I think he kind of took that to his advantage as far as being upping his value and understanding how to stay on the field in college.
Well, Eric, we don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know Nick's going to finish this off by asking you the big question about the game this coming weekend. So one that I have for you really quick, as somebody who now is on the coaching side of things, particularly at that high school level, we just had National Signing Day. What's that tell you now as a coach? What's that day like now as somebody who's in that position?
Honestly, this is honestly my first real signing day. That when I got done out of college and finished playing, I got back to kind of like my nephews and my cousins. So actually, I got a nephew that's heading up to Portland State, just committed as a running back, and I have a little cousin who I was hoping to become a Duck, but he ended up going to UCLA. So that's kind of like a love-hate relationship. And I have a couple other guys that's also going to some D1 colleges that play for me here now. So to just watch them grow up and become student athletes and get ready to go to college to play collegiate is more than everything, knowing that I was able to have an impact on their playing career and development. It means a lot. Like, it's hard for me to explain because as a player, you understand as far as attention being on you and the process of what you need to do to get yourself there. But when you're able to help somebody else along their journey, and the reward just from that is like unmatched. You know what I mean? Especially when you started at one point, you put in the hours, the reps, you know what I mean, to watch that pay off. I think that's just a testimony that I'm doing the right thing and everything I'm doing is working. And also, I was able to learn from my peers when I was at the University of Oregon.
Love it, man. And shout out to Coach Neal out there and all the great DBs he produced. It always felt like the O-line and DBs, man, they were really the leaders of both sides of the football.
Definitely.
Always fun to see you lead that side. And don't give up hope yet, man. With the transfer portal nowadays, you tell those those young Vikings and Bruins one day, if they work hard enough, they could be on Once a Duck too.
Definitely.
with that, we got to end it with your prediction for the Big Ten championship this week. Oregon, Penn State. Who you got?
Ducks. No, without a question. I think the way we've been playing, the defense been playing out, offense been getting to the drives that we need to drive. I like us by at least 10 points. At least 10 points. Yeah. I think Penn State's a good program that has a lot of success. But it's just different when you line up against them Ducks. In the way the secondary you're playing this year, I think, man, they own something. So I'm excited to watch it. I think the Ducks going to come up on top by 21. I'm going to say 21-10. I got to give them a field goal or two, field goal touchdown.
All right. Love it. Well, you heard the prediction right there, folks. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully we can get him on again, and good luck to you and all your guys down there at Pittsburgh High. Thanks for joining us again, Erick Dargan. Once a Duck, always a Duck.
Thank you. Have a good one.
It's awesome to catch up with Erick Dargan and get to not just one, but twice the interviews, and that means half the work for us because we don't have to go and talk about any of our highlight plays there that we're looking at. But what that does mean is we have that much more time to talk about Penn State, the Nittany Lions, not necessarily the team we're expecting, but, after seeing that Ohio State meltdown against Michigan, I'm glad we're getting a new opponent because I'm already sick of seeing the Buckeyes. Maybe we get to see them again in the postseason, but all those dreams of playing them 3 times in one season, glad those possibilities are out the window.
Well, I'll say this, Nick. It is a lot easier to beat somebody twice in a year than 3 times in a year. So maybe that'll end up being a very good thing for the Ducks. This weekend, though, they do have a very tough matchup. Here's the thing. Penn State is no slouch. The number 1 Oregon Ducks, they have the number 3 team in the country, and they are playing them in Indianapolis, Indiana, the house that Peyton Manning built for the Big Ten Championship.
Yeah, from my understanding, you're going to be at the game, Sam. So,
Nick, I am going to be at this game. I am excited. I've got to be honest with you. This entire episode has been stressing me out because looking at it now, I'm going to have about 2.5 hours to edit and upload this entire thing before I've got to leave. We'll see if I'm able to pull it off. I don't really think so. Let's see how that works. Either way, it's going to be a lot of fun to be in Indianapolis to watch this ball game. Oregon and Penn State. It's going to be a good-looking matchup. It's going to be a fun matchup. I'm curious to hear from you, though, besides the last thing that I just interrupted you from saying. What are some of the matchups? What are some of the things you're looking for in this game between these two Big Ten heavy hitters?
it's a good thing we already talked about our 5-star men. And it's a good thing we are one-take men ourselves. And we are looking at the number 1 ranked team in the nation, trying to hold that with the number 1 spot, because with it comes a bye week. And I know there's been a lot of conversation out there. If you possibly swap with the Nittany Lions at home, I'm just going to say Penn State from here on out after that. I think the biggest thing is there are a lot of fans out there saying you get a home game, you get an easier potential schedule instead of playing Tennessee or Ohio State or Alabama. Hey, let's worry about all of that after the victory. I want no answers undecided. Like, I want no questions out there. And this team, this Nittany Lions team is really the team that is the deciding factor, because I feel like everybody would question if we were playing Indiana in this situation. But this really feels like a top Penn State team that has a defense that just guys all over the place on this football field. And apparently, the coaching expectations out there feel like everybody in the media narrative has said the same things about James Franklin that they have about Coach Lanning these past years. Can't win the big game, gets into these big matchups. So this is a real matchup of two teams that their motivation really is to just finally get there and at least get in the playoffs with. And if you can be the champion, you got a big advantage, because I think that extra time off, extra time for preparation and healing is going to really, really matter when you not only have one opponent in front of you, but potentially 2 or 3.
Well, and that is exactly what could be on the table for Oregon if they're able to take out Penn State here. You heard it from our guest earlier, Scott. He nailed it when he said that this is a Penn State team that can absolutely play defense. It's what I love about our second guest, Erick Dargan's prediction. Frankly, I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. Both of these teams can get out there and play some real stifling ball on that side of things. Obviously, we all know Abdul Carter is an unbelievable player for Penn State. Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year so far this season. And I say so far because I expect that after this game, after the next game, he very well could have another one. There could be 3 more games left for Abdul Carter this season. 33 tackles solo, 54 total, 10 sacks this season. He also has 3 pass deflections. So not only is he getting to the quarterback, he's getting his hands up and he's batting balls down as well. He's got
changing positions to do that. Exactly. Just absolutely needs to be noted. That guy's an animal.
Oh my gosh. Unbelievable talent for Penn State. Their leader in tacklers, Jalen Reed, the safety, 75. He is an extremely athletic guy all over the field. Him and Zeke Wheatley, they do a really, really good job in that defensive backfield for Penn State. Frankly, this is going to be a game where, honestly, it might be the team who's able to just score more than 1 or 2 touchdowns that wins this game. It's going to be a real defensive battle. Oregon is absolutely in for a fight. That being said, Penn State's no slouch on offense either. This is a team that went 11-1. This is an exceptionally talented team, a team that's so good you usually wouldn't play this caliber of opponent in a season. It just happens to be the second time this year Oregon's doing so. The running back, the pair, are a lot to handle. The leader in carries is Kytron Allen. He's got 159, 698 yards on the season, along with 5 touchdowns. Nicholas Singleton, he's got 121 carries. He's got 733 yards, 7 touchdowns. This is a team, they are happy to score on the ground. They want to score on the ground. They'll bring in the backup quarterback for him to run on the ground. Hey, everybody on this team, even Al can get out there, score on the ground if need be. This is a team that can really get things done against you.
I think that's one way to look at it, but also, again, I think you look at this Big Ten schedule, and I think that's a big thing that the playoff committee is going to have to go and assess right now in determining, like, what teams were formidable and which ones weren't. And the only real games I feel like we can compare with Penn State is against Washington, and that being a rivalry game for us is also a little bit different. And we face an entirely different offense based on their quarterback situation. So I don't know. It's really tough to figure this out. But when I do look at it, I do look at the situation of the motivation Dan Lanning has had for this team, them going into this game, and especially right there, a pro field right there in Indianapolis that has to be favoring, I believe, the Ducks at this point over Penn State. But we'll have to see it. But I really believe the true key to this game, in my opinion, in the player is going to be the performance of Josh Connerly. As you said, Penn State has a ton of defensive studs that could create a lot of problems for our offense. But Connerly is the type of guy that we've only seen a couple times in Oregon's offensive line front. And I'll just say it right here. It's Panay, it's Max Unger, and then it's Josh Connerly Jr. And those are the guys that just, the way they move with the size and physicality they have at the point of contact, unmatched right now in this game. And it's going to be up to him, I believe, to set the tone right there, especially on the edge, and to make it an easy day for Dylan Gabriel, Jordan James, Noah Whittington, everybody out there that's an offensive playmaker that's going to go out there and seize Oregon's first Big Ten championship in their first Big Ten championship season, man. I'm just ready for it. I believe that this team, after what I've seen, the culmination of every Ducks versus them, I just really can't see at this point it whittling down to a defensive battle. I really have confidence that this Oregon offense will go out and do enough to make this Penn State defense very, very frustrated going into halftime, and have enough to, at least, like our friend Dargan said, have at least a 10-plus point victory out of this game.
Well, and two other little points I do want to bring up, especially when you're trying to compare schedule here. I will say both teams, to the two, I think, most fair matchups outside of that Washington matchup to make between these two teams. Oregon did play Purdue, so did Penn State. Penn State played them 49-10. Oregon played them 35-0. The different scores, both the same type of dominance in my mind. And then the Ohio State game, they lost by a score. Oregon won by 1 point. They could have easily lost by a score. This is going to be a great matchup either way. One more person that I want to mention before we get to predictions that Oregon has to look out for. This is, if you've all seen a Penn State game this year, you are aware of how good a player Tyler Warren is. Tyler Warren is an absolute monster. He has thrown for touchdowns. He has caught touchdowns. He has run touchdowns. He is officially listed as a tight end, 81 receptions, 978 yards. Yes, he will break 1,000 versus Oregon. I'm saying it now. 6 touchdowns receiving on the year, as well as having run for 4 and thrown for 1. He's a player Oregon will have to slow down in order to guarantee a victory. But now, Nick, it is time for our predictions. Time for us to predict the final score of this Big Ten championship game between Oregon and Penn State. Nick, let the people know what you're thinking.
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to start right here confidently with a score nobody else is going to have. 25-13 Ducks. Ducks get one of their extra points to go for 2, and we get the 25-13 victory. Penn State having to kick 2 field goals. So one touch. How's it going? You good there?
Well, I'm a little frustrated with you, frankly.
Did I call your score?
You got so close to it. You got so close to it. And gosh, you keep doing this. You keep getting so darn close to it.
I at least explained how I got there. So I thought about this. I wasn't just, stealing.
I just thought Penn State had a really, really good defense, and Oregon would probably score about 24 to 27 points. And I decided to lean toward the Duckies getting that 27. I had it 27-16 the final.
Yeah, you went the logical football math there.
I know,
but yeah.
I shouldn't have. Here's the reason why I shouldn't have.
It's recorded. It's recorded.
I'll say this with the limited time we have left in this podcast. Dan Lanning loves to do something silly in a big game. Silly either gets you a couple extra points or loses you a couple extra points. Maybe Skip gets you a couple extra. You never know. We'll see what happens here. But I have 27-16 Oregon. Nick, this has been an amazing regular season so far. This has been an amazing conference championship / signing day week special. Just number one, thank you to all the listeners. Thank you, of course, buddy. Let's get out of here. We got about a minute. Let's do our thing.
It's been an amazing podcast, and I'm glad at the end there my voice wasn't the only one to crack. Thank you very much, Sam. Thank you all our Once a Duck listeners. And as always, let us know down in the comments who you want to hear next week. It would be great to have a little live stream action going on maybe Thursday or Friday. Let us know what you would like, if you'd be able to join and be able to help us be able to do kind of an off-week episode. And with that said, you always know where to find us at Once a Duck, always a Duck. Go Ducks, and thanks for joining us.